Hey everybody, this is going to be a video on how you can use AI in order to help you with your revision. Now, we know how we can use ChatGPT to help us with things that we don't know, but it always helps to use it for things such as your exam writing and your exam technique, especially in the context of the Cambridge curriculum. So, what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be answering an exam question from these that I've uploaded over here. And wait, let me just make sure. Yep, you can see it. So we're going to be answering a few of these questions, and we're going to use ChatGPT to mark our answer using the IGCSE Cambridge standard. Now, I have to warn you guys that in order to do this, you're going to have to do it accurately and properly. When you use AI, you need to make sure that you mention everything in terms of how they are going to be marking it. We're talking about assessment objectives, we're going to be talking about the marks breakdown, and it's more importantly than anything, you have to mention the IGCSE Cambridge standard. So I'm going to show you how to do that in this video. So if you go in your Google Classroom, you'll see I've uploaded some revision questions on each unit, Unit 2, Unit 3, Unit 4, Unit 5, and so on and so forth. So this is how I would do my revision. So I have an empty document over here. Let's go to section 2, all right? Let's find a question that we can answer. Here's one. This one is on substitutes and complements. So let's copy, paste that. I don't like the formatting here, so I'm just going to fix that a little bit. You don't have to do this, obviously. I do that just because I have OCD. As a matter of fact, I take that back. It is important because when you paste this on ChatGPT, it'll be easier, obviously, for the AI to read and so on and so forth. Okay. Right, so first of all, let's start with answering the question. So the question is, explain how the price of coffee substitutes and complements can affect the demand for coffee. So obviously this is a section B question, it is worth 4 marks, and they're looking at how coffee substitutes and coffee complements can affect the demand for coffee. So let's see. Let's start with substitutes. So we know that substitutes can have a impact on demand. So what kind of impact? So let's see. Coffee substitutes can have a direct impact on the demand for coffee. So we said that right now we said that coffee substitutes can have a direct impact on the demand for coffee. So in what way does it have a direct impact? So let's say especially with the change in price of substitutes. So we know that when the price of substitutes change, the demand for coffee will obviously change. So we've mentioned that. Tea, let's use tea as an example. If the price of tea were to increase, then the demand for coffee will increase as a result. Because why will this happen? Because consumers will be unwilling to pay a higher price for tea and will therefore buy more coffee instead, right? So let's see, let's analyze this answer. I feel like it is a strong answer because you mentioned the relationship between the demand for substitutes and the demand for coffee. So I think that's a pretty solid 2 out of 2. Let's do one now where it is not so good, like just a normal and like not as good. So if I'm expecting this one to be 2 out of 2, let's write one where it's probably going to be 1 out of 2. So we're looking at complements. Coffee, complementary goods can affect the demand for coffee. This is a very vague answer by just saying complementary goods can affect the demand for coffee. How does it affect the demand for coffee? Okay, so if the price of sugar were to fall, then the price of, then the demand for coffee will increase. That's correct. So if the price of sugar were to fall, then the demand for coffee will increase because sugar and coffee are complementary goods. So this should be credited with a mark. This, however, in my opinion, is not good enough for a 2-mark answer because how does it affect the demand for coffee? In what way? Right? Here you can see it has a direct impact on the demand for coffee, especially with a change in price. See, you're being specific. Here, I'm not being specific, I'm being vague. So we're done with this answer. What I did here is, this is the prompt that I use on ChatGPT. Mark this using Cambridge IGCSE Economics 0455 standard with an assessment objective breakdown and breakdown of how many marks per point, right? So the reason why I use this is because this will break it down using the exact criteria from IGCSE Economics Cambridge, and therefore it will be more accurate in its marking. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go on my ChatGPT here. You can see I have a completely blank ChatGPT to show you how it is. I'm just going to fix the formatting a little bit. I'm not a fan of, I don't like things to be messy. This is just me. So here is my answer. There is my other one. All right, there we go. So there is my answer, and here is my point that I put down for ChatGPT. All right, now let's click. So let's see how they've marked it. Okay. So here, as you can see, if the price of tea were to increase, so they've given 1 mark for knowledge and obviously 1 mark for application because you're applying it to a real-world context. Well explained, full 2 marks. I agree. We mentioned earlier about why it's good, and I feel that that's very good. Okay. So here, effective complements. Okay. Here we have a correct understanding of complementary goods and a brief example on sugar, but the explanation is underdeveloped. Okay. So here, to gain the full mark for application, the student could expand with reasoning. Because sugar is often consumed with coffee, a lower price of sugar makes for the overall consumption of coffee more affordable or desirable. Right? We mentioned earlier that this answer was very vague and underdeveloped. Right? It does show an understanding of complementary goods, but that is not enough for such a question. They gave a half mark for that. That's too generous in my opinion. But they did make it up by saying rounded down to 3 out of 4. I agree that this is a 3 out of 4 answer. But here they'll tell you why it is, how you can improve it to 4 out of 4, right? Or over here, for example, right? So this is an accurate mark as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so let's do another question. Okay, since we've already done this, well, we're not going to need this anymore, so let's go for a different question. Let's go back. Oh, sorry, we can do one more thing just to make sure that it is accurate. I've opened up the mark scheme because this is taken from a past paper, and you can see here relationship between price and demand of substitutes is positive, which is what I mentioned over here. When the price of coffee substitute increases, demand for coffee increases. I've mentioned that over here. Therefore, as a result, we get the 2 out of 2. Now here, relationship between price and demand of complements is negative. I did not mention that. I just said it can affect it, and it's not enough. When price of complements increases, demand for coffee falls, which is what I mentioned over here. And that's why I only got 1 mark. Okay? So you can see that the AI is actually fairly accurate in terms of marking it, especially with the standard and with the mark scheme, breaking it down the way it did. So let's go on to another question. Okay? Let's look at this question. Analyze 2 causes of a fall in demand for a product such as Chinese food. So let's delete this, and now we're going to type in this question. Now, this is a 6-mark question, so we'll need analysis, application, and knowledge, right? So we need to find 2 factors that can affect demand for products such as Chinese foods. But you remember that in order to, things that will affect demand are pirates. So we have price, income, related goods, advertising, tastes and trends, external shocks, and seasonality. So we're relating it to Chinese food. So seasonality does not affect Chinese food, I imagine. External shocks could. Tastes absolutely could. Advertising could. Substitutes or related goods absolutely can. Income can. And price can. So let's start with income. Okay, income is an easy example. We can say income can have a direct impact on the demand for Chinese food. If people, let's say, if consumers' income were to fall, they would have less disposable income, and as a result, spend less on takeout. Right? This will result in a fall in demand for Chinese food. So let's see. Income can have a direct impact on the demand for Chinese food. That's a good knowledge point. If consumers' income were to fall, they would have less disposable income, and as a result, spend less on takeout. This will result in a fall in demand for Chinese food, as consumers will spend more on essentials than let's say wants, because of the fall in income. Now, this isn't bad, this is okay. I would, you can use this as analysis, this will work, right? But I would say that it would have been better if I were to say that Chinese food is a want. So this will result in a fall for Chinese food, demand for Chinese food, as consumers will spend more on essentials than wants. Yeah. It should be okay. But if you can word it better, I would. So we've done pirate, we've done income. Let's do another good. Let's do another one. Let's say, which one should we pick? Price, potentially. We can use substitutes again. We can do advertising. We can do tastes. We can do external shocks. I would say let's do advertising. The level of advertising can have an effect on the demand for Chinese food. If Chinese food, what do you call it? If Chinese food is heavily advertised, it can generate more interest in Chinese food and increase awareness. Actually, you know what? Let's change that. It can generate more interest and increase awareness of Chinese food, which will result in an increase Oops, sorry. You see, this is bad. Um, we're looking at a fall in demand. So let's not put heavily advertised. Is not advertise. It won't generate enough interest or awareness of Chinese food, which will result in a decrease in demand for Chinese food. All right, so let's read that again. Apologies for the error. The level of advertising can have an effect on the demand for Chinese food. If Chinese food is not advertised, it won't generate enough interest or awareness of Chinese food, which will result in a decrease in demand for Chinese food. If if other cuisines are advertised, it would cause consumers to try their food instead of eating from a Chinese restaurant. It would cause consumers to try their food instead of eating from a Chinese restaurant. Yeah, that'll do. So I'm okay with the answer. Like, there is analysis on both. It should be enough for a 6 mark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, go back to ChatGPT, and do the same thing. Okay? Since we've already said earlier that it is from the GCSE standard, that we can just put this in as well. Okay? But you know what? Just to be safe, let's put that in as well. Okay? Also, hold on. I think I've made a mistake. There we go. So, right here. There we go. All right, and we answer. All right, boom. So, see, 1 mark for knowledge, 1 mark for application, 1 mark for analysis, right? So let's see this one. All right. So the first point, we identified income as a factor affecting demand. We applied it to the context of Chinese food and takeout, and we explained why lower income shifts spending towards necessities, reducing demand for non-essentials. And that is why we got the full 3 marks for this question. So this is a good 3-mark answer. Second one. Now, here is the part what I was telling you. So we identified the demand factor, which was, what was the demand factor? Advertising. There is a relevant example with Chinese food versus competing cuisines. Some reasoning providing reduced awareness but lacks depth, like impact on consumer preference or visibility. So how we got 5 out of 6. Now personally, I thought it would have just been enough for a 6 out of 6, but it totally makes sense why they would give it 5 out of 6. No problem. But let's see how we can improve it. Okay, to secure the final analysis mark, expand on the second point. For example, if Chinese food is not advertised while competitors are actively promoting, consumers may shift their preferences, reducing brand loyalty and ultimately demand for Chinese food. I 100% agree with this point, and that is how we can improve it. Okay? Now let's go to the mark scheme. Over here you can see, analyze 2 causes of a fall in demand for Chinese food. So we have, which one did we choose? We chose income, decrease in income, decreasing demand for Chinese food as people eat out less, as eating out is seen as as luxury goods. All right, there we go. That was the one we made. And lack of advertising due to little investments in marketing, less popular or less awareness of product. Okay, so I did lack of advertising. I did this one here, but not this one. So personally, I feel like if you had a lenient examiner, you might get the full 3 marks here. But again, you know, you have to be more clearer with the answer. Okay, so that's how you should use AI for your revision and using it for your exam answers and your exam technique. It is important that you recognize why we do this. We do this not so that we can show that we are perfect, because obviously we're not. We have to be honest with ourselves in terms of our answers so that we can improve our technique for the actual exam. Okay? We have to be honest with each other in terms of our answers so that we're best prepared for it. Okay? I hope this helps, guys. And yeah, if you have any questions about this, you can email me. I'm going to do one more video on this, but this time I'm going to focus on an 8-mark question. Okay? Take care, guys, and yeah, good luck.